Ryanair is the most successful airline in Europe. They carry more than 180 million passengers every single year, more than Lufthansa, Air France, or British Airways. But if you ask passengers what comes to mind, you'll hear very different words: brutal, punishing, and most importantly, hard landing. For many, Ryanair means cramped seats, endless fees, and strict rules. Scroll through their social media and you'll find thousands of complaints. And instead of apologizing, Ryanair often makes fun of them.
Do you have Instagram? No. Snapchat? Still no. Then what do you have? Vagina.
And yet, despite all this hatred, Ryanair is one of the most profitable airlines in the world. So how did they pull it off? How did they become both Europe's most successful and most hated airline? The story begins in 1985. The Ryan family launched a tiny airline linking Ireland to London. At the time, flying was expensive. Air travel was still seen as a luxury. But Ryanair had a problem. They were up against national giants like Aer Lingus and British Airways, airlines with government backing, huge fleets, and decades of brand loyalty. By the late 80s, Ryanair was bleeding cash. They were losing passengers, losing routes, and teetering on the edge of collapse. It looked like just another failed startup. But then, just as Ryanair seemed doomed, they found a way to flip the entire industry on its head. In the early 1990s, Ryanair turned to America for inspiration. Southwest Airlines had revolutionized the US market by doing something radical, making flying affordable to the masses. The formula was simple: strip out the luxuries, cut costs at every turn, run aircraft like factories in the sky, fast, efficient, and constantly moving. Ryanair copied the model line by line. Meals? Gone. Lounges? Gone. Big expensive airports? Forget it. Instead, they flew to smaller airports outside major cities, places with cheaper landing fees and less congestion. London Stansted instead of Heathrow, Paris Beauvais instead of Charles de Gaulle. The result? They could sell flights at prices Europe had never seen before. For the first time, an ordinary worker could fly across Europe for less than the cost of a train ticket. It wasn't a luxury, it wasn't glamorous, but it worked. The passengers came flooding in, and Ryanair was reborn. But here's the thing about Ryanair. Those low headline fares were only part of the story. The real money came later. Everything beyond the seat itself had a price tag. Want to bring a bag? Pay up. Want to sit with your kids? That's another fee. Forgot to print your boarding pass? That could cost more than the flight itself. This wasn't an accident, it was the strategy. By advertising rock-bottom prices, Ryanair got passengers through the door. And then, step by step, they charged for almost everything else. This was the infamous nickel and dime machine, and it turned Ryanair into a money-making powerhouse. But it also started building a reputation that would follow them everywhere. At the center of this transformation was one man, Michael O'Leary. A fiery, sharp-tongued CEO who thrived on controversy. O'Leary wasn't just running an airline, he was building a circus. He suggested charging passengers to use the toilets.
Did you really want to charge to use toilets on Ryanair planes? Yes or no?
Yes.
He floated the idea of standing room only tickets, even coin-operated seatbelts. Of course, none of this ever actually happened, but every outrageous statement made headlines. And for Ryanair, that publicity was priceless. O'Leary himself once admitted, the cheapest airline cannot also be the nicest. And instead of fighting the criticism, he embraced it. Ryanair wasn't going to be loved, and he didn't care. But for passengers, the jokes weren't funny anymore. Ryanair became infamous for strict policies and uncomfortable flights. Their cabins had some of the tightest legroom in Europe. Seats didn't recline. Cabin announcements doubled as advertising, turning flights into a captive market. And the penalties? They were brutal. Travelers fined hundreds for arriving a few minutes late. Families separated across the cabin unless they paid extra. Even a misplaced boarding pass could cost more than the ticket itself. By the 2010s, Ryanair wasn't just disliked. It was being called the world's most hated airline. And yet, here's the shocking part, their planes were still full. By 2014, even Ryanair had to admit their reputation was hurting them. They launched a campaign called Always Getting Better, a friendlier website, allocated seating, slightly softer policies, and it worked, to a point. Customer satisfaction improved slightly, but Ryanair still ranked near the bottom in almost every survey. And here's the paradox, it didn't matter, because millions of Europeans would still take a €20 flight to Barcelona or Milan, even if they hated every minute of it. Ryanair built its empire on a simple, uncomfortable truth. People don't love airlines. They love cheap prices. The bad reputation isn't a weakness, it's part of the brand. People complain, they rant, they swear they'll never fly again. And then, they see a €15 ticket to Spain, and they book it. Ryanair has shown the aviation world something surprising. Being loved isn't necessary. Being cheap is enough. So here's the real question. Would you take the €15 Ryanair ticket or pay more for comfort?